It all begins in the royal capital of Paluma, where a guy threatens some beings with his whip who are demi-humans. Then the main character talks to the demi-human in a decent manner. The demi-human talks about the cargo being placed on that cart and asks if it's his, to which he says yes, and that he might be able to return depending on how his negotiations go. After they finish talking, the main character gives him some money for his work, but everyone around is scandalized because he's paying for a demi-human, which seems horrible to them. The demi-human himself asks him not to pay, but the main character insists that he's paying for the service as it should be. Then a girl arrives, saying that once something gets into Banaza's head, he won't give up. She asks him to just accept the money and buy a meal for everyone. So, the demi-human accepts under pressure and tells everyone else that they'll eat on Banaza's account, earning the appreciation of all the demi-humans. The humans start looking at him differently, and he starts wondering why there's so much discrimination. The girl tells him that such things happen in the capital, but while she's talking, he starts to shine and suddenly disappears, leaving the girl wondering where he went. Elsewhere, they say that the hero candidate has been successfully summoned. Someone who looks like a priest welcomes him, and he finds himself in the magical capital of Clear Hall. When the priest calls him a hero candidate, he thinks there must be some mistake, as he's just a merchant named Banaza. Hearing this, the priest starts the typical speech about how after a long time fighting against the Dark Army, they decided to summon brave heroes and so on. However, Banaza doesn't understand any of it. A maid brings a crystal ball to him, forcing him to put his hand on it to see his stats. When he does, it says they're all back to level 1 since they're summoned to another world. However, those summoned this way receive a divine blessing from God, a power an ordinary person can't achieve just by training. That's why when his status window appears, the numbers are ridiculously low, and he has no divine revelation. The maid is shocked by this and says his stats are for a completely normal person. Banaza even tries to explain, saying he's really just a normal person after all, just a merchant. Everyone there is disappointed as this was another failure. So Banaza says they don't need to be like that and just asks to go home. But while he's talking, everyone's attention is diverted to another hero being summoned, and looking at his stats, they're all 999. The hero enjoys the attention he's getting, and when he looks at Banaza and sees the state of the guy's stats, he despises him, saying it looks like he'll have to save the world alone. Everyone gathers around the hero, asking him to save the world from the Dark Army. While everyone celebrates with the hero, Banaza is left alone, and all he can think of is that even though a bad thing happens, he has to find a way to get back home. So, a moment later, he's put on a carriage, and as it departs, he remembers talking to the king, asking if he can send him back to his world. But the king says the portal that opened has already closed, and they can't open the portal twice. They tell him he's a failure and that they'll permit him to live in a forest far from the capital, where he can be whatever he wants. So he decides to chat with the carriage driver, but he's told he doesn't have permission to speak to him. Banaza asks if he has a slave contract to take him away. The demi-human doesn't understand what he's talking about, and Banaza says in his old world, contracts between humans and demi-humans were common. The driver says that in this world, whether you're human or demi-human doesn't matter. Everyone is treated equally. Banaza gets excited and starts talking more, but he's told it's time to stop talking and just closes his cage. He starts remembering his other world and says maybe this world isn't so bad. Several days pass, and after 20 days, they arrive at a certain place. There, they give him a magical bag from the king, saying there's food and gold inside for him to start. Before leaving, the driver tells him that ahead of him is the Black Forest, where the Dark Army's troops gather, and they give him a warning that if he doesn't want to die, it's better to not go ahead and simply leave these lands as soon as possible. So when Banaza is left alone, he thinks that even if he tells him to leave, he has nowhere to go. So he decides to take a look at his magical bag, and he's glad to see it activated just like in his old world. After seeing everything in his bag, he decides what he needs most right now is a sword. So he takes out a long and well-illustrated sword from his bag, and just after grabbing the sword, slimes appear. He's surprised because they're also in this world, but he decides to ignore them because in his world, they're not aggressive. However, the slimes start jumping at him, so he has to fight. After defeating the 3 of them in a simple battle, an announcement from the system appears, showing that he's leveled up to level 2, but all his stats have an infinity symbol. However, since he doesn't know this symbol, he just ignores it. Then another window appears, telling him that he can now give voice commands, so he activates the assistant. The voice is the voice of a girl. She starts giving him a warning, saying that the bag he received from the king was cursed to attract enemies every time he touched it. So he realized why the slimes appeared so quickly after he took his sword. However, the system removes the curse and completes this easily. Banaza decides to enter the forest, but a warning appears saying that the forest is contaminated with high concentrations of melicium. Banaza doesn't seem to know what melicium is, so the system explains that melicium is the generic term for the liquids and gases emitted by demons that cause serious harm to humans. So the system asks if she can purify the entire area, and he understands that if she asks, she can do it. He asks how much it would cost, and the system says it needs a third of all his magical power. So he agrees to this amount and says she can go ahead and purify the forest. When she accepts, a gigantic magic circle covers the entire forest, causing a violent wave of energy. When everything is over, the forest doesn't seem to have changed much, but the system starts throwing several pop-up windows at him, saying he's leveled up from level 102 to 360. Meanwhile, in the castle, the princess starts talking to her father about how what he did was very cruel. After all, sending the failed hero candidate to the forest is too much. She mentions rumors that the Dark Army is there, but the king doesn't seem to care much about this. Then one of the servants enters the room, saying they found evidence of the use of high-level sacred magic, purification. So the king is all excited, thinking it was his hero who used that magic, but the informant says it wasn't him. After all, the magic was used in the forest they sent Banaza to, and his hero is going to another forest on the opposite side. Meanwhile, Banaza has reached level 367 and is surprised since he reached such a high level even without killing any monsters. He believes that in this world, people level up just by using magic, and he also wonders what the symbol is in his stats. So he asks the system to remove all those pop-up windows from his way and also worries about his mana, but it starts filling up before his eyes, filling up again in a few seconds. He's convinced this happened because his mana capacity isn't that big, and he wonders what to do now. After all, he was expelled from the Empire and can't go back. The system offers him a gender change to hide his true identity, so he accepts the option but ends up becoming a waifu. Then he realizes things won't work out with this body, so he changes gender again. He says he can now return to the Empire, and the system soon offers him the option to transport directly to the royal capital. He obviously accepts, appearing there instantly, thinking that teleportation magic was ultra rare in his world, but it must be beginner magic here, or so he assumes. But while he's thinking that, he gets an idea and orders to teleport to his previous world. But nothing happens, so Banaza decides to go to the Adventurers Guild. The system soon indicates where the guild is, and once there, Banaza registers. After that, he goes to look for work and ends up hearing a girl asking for help from some adventurers. She says her problem has to do with the forest they sent him to, so obviously, no adventurer wants to help her, especially with the rumor that the Dark Army is there. Feeling sorry for her, Banaza approaches the girl, and she asks if he's sure since she doesn't have much money to pay. So he says he just happened to come from that forest and tells her he can go back there with her using the same teleportation magic. After hearing that, everyone starts suspecting the guy because it seems he's trying to take a girl in a ridiculous conversation. Banaza realized he was wrong when he thought teleportation magic was something everyone could use. So a knight goes there, asking him to stay away from the girl. She introduces herself as Valorosa and asks him more about the teleportation magic he just mentioned. She says he's talking about very advanced magic, but he doesn't seem like an experienced mage to be able to use this magic. Then one of the mages with her starts insulting him, and when he's thrown against the wall, Banaza says he has no luck. He introduces himself to the girls, saying he can teach them the magic. So they leave the guild, where he shows the magic to everyone, really managing to teleport all the girls. When they arrive there, everyone is amazed that he used that magic, and the mage asks him if he's a great mage. But he tells her he's just a beginner who abused a bit of magic. Then the girl who was with them starts saying she doesn't feel the Milicium anymore. And when Banaza is about to say he's responsible for getting rid of the Milicium, the system warns him that it's dangerous and will inform the demon she can use purification. Then apparently all the girls understand what's going on and start pointing their weapons at the girl. She even pretends not to know what's happening, but soon shows her fangs and then turns into a huge wolf, saying her name is Fenris, the younger sister of Fengirl, the fourth infernal. She says her brother told her to watch the enemy and get food, but when she came back, he was dead, and she was angry about it. Then she starts attacking them, making all the girls fall, and seeing them all on the ground, Banaza runs towards them trying to help. Fenris realizes that at least one of them hasn't been hit, but says she'll finish all the others first. When she attacks, Banaza manages to get the girl out of the way. He decides to teleport everyone to the capital, but at the last second, he ends up abandoning the teleportation, fleeing from one of Fenris's attacks. Seeing he's left behind and has no other option, he decides to face the demon. This was the first part, so if you want the second part, let me know in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe. Peace.